As Russian troops face unanticipated setbacks and losses in Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin is waving his biggest sword, putting his nuclear weapons on high alert.
War in Europe was something most people associated with bygone centuries, but here we are in 2022 with missiles raining down.
Oh, that's a missile!
The continent's largest country, Russia, declaring war on the second largest, Ukraine. The operation has been as swift as it has been brutal. Already, hundreds of lives have been lost in this campaign of shock and awe, all because of the expansionist plans of volatile Russian President Vladimir Putin. Bill Browder is one of the world's preeminent voices on Russia. That's because he knows firsthand about Putin's disregard for life. You've had personal dealings with Putin. What's he like?
Well, I've been in conflict with Vladimir Putin ever since the Russian regime, the Putin regime, murdered my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, back in 2009. I made it my life's mission to get justice for him. And in the process, I created a law called the Magnitsky Act, which imposes asset freezes and visa sanctions on corrupt officials in the Putin regime. And Putin went out of his mind when this law was passed. And he started chasing me around the world, trying to have me arrested wherever I went so I could be sent back to Russia and killed like my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky.
How would you describe Vladimir Putin's psychological mindset?
So the culture in Russia, in Russian government, in Russian politics, is probably most similar to the culture of prison yard. You can't show any sign of weakness. You can't back down. There's no negotiating. It's win-lose. You know, the strong take the weak. And in Putin's mind, he's got to prove that he's strong. He's got to prove that he's the best, the strongest, the worst, the most vicious, because anything less than that, and he feels like he'll get taken down.
The world has watched on in horror this last week as Russia flexed all of its military muscle in Ukraine. But Bill believes, unfortunately, this is only the beginning of a larger campaign that'll see Putin turn his attention to gaining influence in other countries that used to make up part of the Soviet Union.
I'm sure they're on Putin's radar, and the potential dangers that we face now and going forward are incalculable. And I believe that Putin will just try to challenge and see whether the West, whether the members of NATO are all going to band together, all for one and one for all, to protect Estonia or Lithuania. And I think Putin is banking on the idea that we won't. And that's the big challenge. There may be a moment in the not too distant future when the United States is at war with Russia.
You make it sound like Ukraine is almost just a stepping stone in terms of a larger plot here for Putin.
I'm certain it is. Now, it may not happen in the next week or two. This could be a process that plays out over the next year or two. But I don't see in any way that Ukraine is where Vladimir Putin stops.
It's the beginning of a new chapter, and alas, one that will be very dangerous and very unstable.
Michael Kimmage is a former diplomat who used to look after the Russia-Ukraine portfolio for the US State Department. He's now a professor of Russian history at the Catholic University of America, and he's worried about what the next chapter will be. Can you give me the best case and the worst case scenario of how all of this plays out?
Well, the worst case scenario is that the war is not contained to the territory of Ukraine. Begins as a Ukrainian war and becomes a European war. If you want to entertain worst case scenarios, you could go back and look at World War I and World War II and think of them as wars about Ukraine, which to a degree both of them are. Ukraine is pivotal to both of those wars. Its territory, where it fits in various alliance structures, so it's not inconceivable that a kind of World War I type scenario could flow from this. That, I think, is clearly the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that the fighting ends quickly, but even that is not a very good scenario because that involves either the dismemberment or the Russian domination of Ukraine.
So the best case scenario is still